It's Cammy, baby.
Life go prosper, they are the suffer, and no go left so when I God I believe. Then you know but stress me, God don't dey bless, but the no go test when I God I believe. Now for food to put on lepet, tell me I must get cake, pray for the better. When I God I believe, I no go sell me soul for no chicken change, bout to no man no go down. When I God I believe, bad but ngala bad for yeah, got the but ngala got the for why green. Mbakadoy, lana kuma shabange sokrifi alabama foy, yeah? What the mamu so me runga dongam, Obaka labo chinogu dombam, yeah? I would submit the car was a jumpam, one the baka like a recarzi me zongam, yeah? I will put another ship, Ibai boy, yeah? And there's the name of pant, Ibai boy. Ikalinga, Ishelu, Ankala Deli, Yamakamalane Kuma Shaba, one over Ibai, yeah? I believe in what I do, so it turns up.
It's Cammy, baby.
It began because I came to this country. This was the first place in America I actually lived.
Really?
From Ireland.
Okay.
But my husband is American, and we were living in England at the time, and he was beginning to hate living in England and wanting to go back to America. So it was pure happenstance. He's from Brooklyn, New York. I didn't know much about Brooklyn, New York. I'd visited a couple of times. And he got a job here.
On the Vineyard?
On the Vineyard, teaching science.
Oh, good.
And that seemed like, okay, we'll go there, you know. I'd been here once. And what I remembered about it was the Confederate soldier downtown. Because I'm a history person, that always struck me as weird.
Yes.
And the fact that it was there. And so that's what I remembered, that and the Flying Horses Carousel.
Oh, definitely have to remember the carousel.
Mm-hmm. So I got a job in the Oak Bluff School. And it was great. It was a state grant. So it was one of those things, you know, you got a budget, you got paid, but nobody really knew where you fitted or what you were doing, which is like most of those grants. But they gave me this group of students, and I'd never taught young kids before or since. That 3 years was my only time teaching such young children. They were first grade, and there were 17 of them, and 14 were African American, and 16 were boys. Now that did not reflect the demographic of the school at all. And the sad thing is, I think now, in the same situation, I wouldn't ask the same questions because I know the answers. But then I was genuinely like, what is going on? And I would ask these questions like, well, where's the curriculum? Oh, just do something interesting.
Oh.
That's a pretty wide parameter.
Oh, boy, yeah.
And I remember saying, well, isn't there a curriculum that they should be following like everybody else? And how come this group was put together? Why is there only one girl? Why are all the African American kids in this one class?
Right.
And there was never an answer that made any sense.
Okay.
So 2 years into this, I thought, I know what needs to be done. I've seen enough, I've heard enough. I lived in England as an Irish person during a period of we call the Troubles. I knew what it was to be othered.
Yes.
I got that type of thing. And I thought, well, I think I was more than anything, I was outraged. These were little children. You spend
Yes.
3 years with little children.
How old were they?
We began together in first grade, so they were 6.
Okay.
And they were already being earmarked for failure. And it was the indifference to that horrified me. And I was very attached to those kids. And so I realized somebody had to advocate.
Right.
So off I went to the Bunch of Grapes bookstore in Vineyard Haven. 20 years ago when this all began, books were still being sold everywhere. Books were a big deal. And there were books about everything on the vineyard. Movie stars, haunted houses, old trees, old
Everything
buildings.
except black people.
Everything except black people.
Yeah.
Cats of Mother's Vineyard, dogs of Mother's Vineyard, goats of Mother's Vineyard. I mean, Mother's Vineyard was a big seller.
Yes.
But nothing about black people. Now, I'm a history person, and I knew African Americans had been here as long as European Americans. So I took myself off to the Vineyard Museum. I thought, I know how to write curriculum. I'll go do this. I got to the Vineyard Museum. They said, oh, no, we don't have anything, which wasn't true, as it later turned out. They just didn't have anything they cared to value.
Yes.
They only come on vacation.
Uh-oh.
And I thought, well, my kids have been with me for 2 years, so that is a really good vacation. They're doing pretty well. And I started doing the research, and I uncovered an amazing story. It goes all the way, the full spectrum, from enslavement all the way to extraordinary success and everything in between. The whole 400-year experience is here, as it is everywhere else. But it was still not reaching the kids, because I was going to academic conferences and publishing papers, and 5 people would be really interested in that, and we'd talk about it. And at that point, somebody put me in touch with Carrie Camille Tankard, who was then and is still the vice president of the NAACP on the island.
And her brother had a TV show.
Yes, brother-in-law.
In-law.
Yes,
Okay.
Bobby Tankard.
And her in-laws also had a restaurant on Circuit Ave.
That's right, yes. So we were put in touch with each other. So it was the start of a great friendship and a great collaboration. And we always say she was sick and tired. She always says, I was sick and tired of going to the schools every February with, can you use this? I've got this about this person. I've got this about that person. Everybody saying, oh, thank you so much. And nothing ever happening.
Right.
And we always say she was sick and tired, and I was mad as hell on behalf of my kids. And we thought we had no money. So we thought, if we can get 4 sites, we had great ideas. We had 4 sites, then this history will begin to be found again, because it's just been ignored. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's just been ignored. So if we have 4 sites, people will, even if they're just out walking the dog, they're going to learn something that they didn't know before. And the history will begin to be found. Well, last year we dedicated site number 30.
Oh.
And it's interesting how time moves on. The Vineyard Museum wants to work with us now and
of course.
do an exhibit.
Right.
And needless to say, in February for Black History Month. But at least they want to do that, and they want us to give them the information.
Yes.
And we just got a request from Edgartown. Always a town difficult to read. Mark was very interested in the Edgartown aspect of the story, because like everybody, he assumed Edgartown had always been the kind of racist, exclusive town it was when we began this work.
Well, it's funny, too, because Marie Allen had said that years ago they were looking at some property in Edgartown, and they came up, Edgartown and Vineyard Haven came up with the biggest excuses.
Yeah. And Carrie always says that when they came here in the 1960s from Newark, New Jersey, and they were looking for a house, they were shown a house here in the Highlands. It was unofficial. It was done in a New England way, but it was real.
Yes.
And Edgartown for us was a citadel we were going to charge, because the irony of it all is, in the 1800s, Edgartown was the most diverse town on the island. The crews came in from all over the world for the whaling trade. I've read the crew lists. They were every ethnicity, every color, every culture. And it was a diverse town. And they actually had Frederick Douglass speak there. You'll see that site today. They petitioned the U.S. government to end the Fugitive Slave Act. But with the collapse of the whaling trade and replacing whale oil with petroleum, that began the gentrification and all the racism and exclusiveness that came with that.
Okay.
And now they're beginning to climb back a bit. Now, whether it was somebody I took out last week said, yeah, they are, but it's just business. It still feels the same. Probably a good amount of truth in that.
Yes.
But from our point of view, to get that story out, we've just been approached to have a new site in Edgartown at the home of Captain Morse, one of the big whaling captain families, big white house on the waterfront, for Sarah Brown, who was the wife of William A. Martin, the island's only African-American whaling captain, who was their maid for many, many years. And I'm thinking, do I want a site that talks about when she was a maid in this house? On the other hand, do I want a site that connects everybody with the reality of her existence? And I think I'm leaning that way. But so that's the story of how it all began.
Wow.
And we finance it mostly ourselves. Very rarely write grants, mostly because we have no time because we're so busy. But
So it's just the two of you?
we have 4 tour leaders at the moment who work. That's part of our mission, to provide economic opportunity in the community. So people are educated, because we don't do, the fluffy tours that people do on Martha's Vineyard. Oh, that's where this movie star was, and that's where it's really a history lesson that we do.
Great.
And so we train them for that. It's a transferable skill, and we pay them. So we also give scholarships to 2 graduating seniors at the Island High School. We have to make sure that we get the kids that others won't go for. That we do. So we've come a long way.
Excellent.
And now I'm going to show you Baptist Temple Park. It's actually, believe it or not, been a little bit landscaped. It was an absolute wilderness before. It has been a little bit landscaped. And it is the scene of the Black Baptist Association, who had a church there from 1870s, late 1870s, for 50 years. Some mysterious fire happened. We don't know much about that. We can't find much about that, but I think there's probably more to find.
Yeah.
We have talked to the East Chop Association, who own Baptist Temple Park, which is interesting. But it was the scene of annual revival in the Baptist faith. And everywhere you go in this area, the Highlands comes off of Baptist Temple Park. People came here in the summer. They often talk about the wooden tents they brought. I think many people brought their houses, which were pretty basic, and set them up here. The importance of home ownership here, because we're not talking of summer community, we're talking of 5 generations of African American property ownership in this area, and the hard work that went into acquiring that property, and not only the hard work that went into acquiring it, but keeping it and making it work. And you find that the story is very much a story of hard work and how do we make this work. This is the Shearer Cottage.
Oh, yes.
and we're going to go around the other side as we go through the Highlands so you can see it better, but it is still operating as an inn. And so we generally say that we won't bring visitors up to the house that way because there are guests staying there and it's a working inn. It's the oldest African American owned inn on Martha's Vineyard, and it is still owned and operated by the family of Charles and Henrietta Shearer. Their great-granddaughter, Lee Van Allen, is the current innkeeper and owner. It's 5 generations. And the story that this tells down, too warm. The family are very good at keeping their records. They still have incredible records, and this inn is featured in the Smithsonian African American Museum. Oak Bluffs has a section, A Place of Our Own. And Shearer, here's the story that the family have kept such good records, so we know the story. Charles Shearer was born into enslavement in Virginia. At the time of the Civil War, he was 17. The Union Army was heading south through Virginia. He ran away to join them, and they took him to the Hampton Institute, now Hampton University. Mm-hmm. And he stayed there until he was 30 years old, first as a student and then as a teacher.
Yes.
He met his wife, Henrietta, there, who was a member of the Blackfoot Native American tribe. And they stayed there till he was 30 years old. And then you look at the dates, you say, why did they move north? Mm. They moved to Boston. But if you look at the dates and put it in a historical context, it's the collapse of Reconstruction. Mm-hmm. It's the rise of the Klan. The South is going to be a very difficult, it's the beginning of the worst era.
Right.
And they come north, and he becomes a waiter at the Parker House Hotel, later the head waiter. What brought him here was this, the Baptist, so he was an elder of the church. Mm-hmm. He bought the original part of the house, which I'll show you when we go around the back of it, from the Baptist church. And they came here for annual revival. And like everyone else that comes here, you have to walk to make it work. That's still the case, even now. And they opened a laundry. And for many years they operated a laundry from here. The present owner's mother, who passed away a few years ago, who I knew well, said to me she remembered her grandfather. She remembered all the characters. Then she said that the daughters hated the laundry. It was hard, horrible work. Henrietta would not let them give up the laundry, but when she passed, they opened as an inn because they said people stay here anyway. Mm-hmm. Why don't we do that? Mm-hmm. A lot easier than having the laundry. And that is what they did. It became a center of this community. Many families, their daughters and sons worked there in the summer. Mm-hmm. They had many illustrious guests, Paul Robeson, Ethel Waters, William S. Lewis, who was the first African American in a presidential administration. They were featured in the Green Book. So they became really one of the pivotal reasons why the community developed here. Uh-huh. And they are site number 1 on the Heritage Trail, the first one we opened. Wow. It seemed like the most obvious place to start.
You're right. Everything used to take place at Shearer Cottage.
Yeah.
Actually, theater, I think they had Dorothy West place there.
Yeah. Lots of theatre, lots of... it was very definitely a community centre. Now, particularly after the rain yesterday, the roads here are terrible. I am going to do my best to avoid the worst of the potholes, but it won't be possible in some parts of the Highlands. So right now we're not doing so badly, but there will be some huge. I would like to know more about how Baptist Temple Park became the property of the East Chalk Association.
I'd like to know why Reverend Deniston's house was torn down.
I can tell you that. I will tell you that as we go by there. It still horrifies me every time I go past it. Irreplaceable. An irreplaceable history lost.
And they did that intentionally. They tore that down.
Without a doubt.
Because they could have given it back to told the family, look, we'll cut a deal with you.
And
But see, none of them were interested.
well, I think that, there's one of our tours. We'll move over and let them go by.
Hi, Elaine.
Hi, good morning, Joanne.
How's your tour going?
We're doing very well.
Excellent. Well, I have my ladies with me.
Hello. Good morning, ladies.
All right.
We're just heading, you leaving here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just heading in here.
All right.
I thought we might see you.
I actually, when I drove past, I looked for you.
Yeah,
But onward.
onward.
So you said the president's house is not up island?
No, it's in Katama.
Katama, I told you.
Yeah.
Now we are at the biggest plaque on the Heritage Trail. The home of Adam Powell, leader of the Democratic majority in Congress during the Kennedy and Johnson administration, responsible for 112 civil rights amendments, getting them through Congress, and his first wife, Miss Isabel, and Miss Bell was a phenomenon. She passed away when she was a phenomenon. She was his first wife, and when they met, he was apparently a real charmer. And all the ladies, when we began this work, would come out and say to me, "Oh, you never saw Adam. He was so handsome." I guess he had quite the following.
Yes, he did. He sure did.
Miss Bell, who I knew in her 80s and 90s, was still phenomenally beautiful woman.
Yes.
And I remember many conversations with her when she was sitting there with high-heeled red stilettos and short shorts and the dancer's legs, because she'd begun her career as a dancer in the Cotton Club. When she met Adam Clayton Powell on their first date, he said, "Can I call you Bunny?" And she said, "If I can call you Bunny." So this is the Bunny Cottage. See the rabbits either side of the door. And it's still, the house is still the property of the Powell family. And again, we're into 5th generation, and this is another one featured on the Smithsonian African American Museum. Now, Miss Bell told me the story that she was a dancer, she had a child, she'd been in the first version of Imitation of Life. She was what they used to call a showgirl. And Adam Clayton Powell was a minister at the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, New York. His father was the senior minister, and his father did not approve of showgirls.
Of course not.
Of course not. So she reinvented herself as the minister's wife.
Okay.
She gave up her career, changed the way she dressed. 12 years into the marriage, Adam Clayton Powell met another showgirl and took off. And I thought, oh, this poor lady.
Didn't they have a child, the first?
He had a child
the
with the
first-
second
Okay.
wife. Miss Bell already had a son, Preston Powell, who was adopted by Adam Clayton Powell.
Okay.
But I thought, this poor lady, she's going to be so sad. So when I met her the first time, I was cautious to what I should ask her. But that wasn't how it was at all. She was a larger-than-life personality, and she said to me, I had a wonderful life with Adam, and I've had a wonderful life ever since. He was the smartest, funniest. She said he always made everything seem like it was just spontaneous, just happened. He always had a plan. It was always thought out. And she gave me some advice that I've carried with me for life. She said, you know, if somebody doesn't like you for who you are, you make sure you let that be their problem.
Yes.
Because you're going to have enough problems of your own. You don't need to borrow other people's.
That's right.
And I think she was reflecting on her own life story.
Sure.
But she was a wonderful, outgoing, funny, creative person. And I'm so glad that she didn't feel bitter about the end of the marriage, because she really didn't. She said, I've had a wonderful life.
Yeah.
I think that's how you live to be 99.
Yes.
You know, that you sort of take it as
You pick your battles.
You pick your battles. But if you look on that plaque, it's a huge plaque.
Yes,
And if
it
you'd
is.
known Miss Bell, you'd know why, because she was absolutely adamant about what went on there. And we always, when we develop the site, we have a big event to publicize it. We put African American Heritage Trail of Mother's Vineyard honors, whoever we're honoring. And then the families, or whoever is, you know, still around, they write what goes on there. They choose.
Oh, I
And
see.
Miss Bell chose to include that she made the best Bloody Marys in the area. And my Irish Catholic school background kicked in, and I said, oh, but Miss Bell, maybe you don't want to say that. And she goes, why not? I do. And I thought, you know what, why am I in the mix? If that's what
right.
she wants,
That's right.
this is her plaque.
That's,
And so it's right on there, the best Bloody Marys in the neighborhood. She told me a wonderful story about Adam Powell that I've always remembered. When he was elected to Congress in 1945, he was not the first African American, but he was the first who refused to sit in the special corner of the Congress chamber that they had for the few African Americans that they had.
yeah.
And they said to him, oh, welcome, you sit over there. And he said, nah, I don't like it there. And he went into the main Congress chamber and sat next to a representative from Mississippi, who was so surprised at him doing this, that apparently he said to him, what are you doing, boy? Get up, you can't sit here. And Adam acted like it was the best welcome he'd ever had, and said, oh, I like it here. And so the Mississippi representative got up and moved his seat. Adam got up and moved and sat next to him again. 3 times. You know, like that kids game where you follow your friend and you sit next to your friend? 3 times. And Miss Bell said it was typical of Adam. She said he didn't take nothing from no one.
No.
And the segregationists, and that was how she referred to Congress pretty accurately.
Segregationists.
The segregationists, they were all laughing at one of their own
I bet.
because he looked like a fool. So I've always remembered that story. It seemed like a good one. And we're going to go back into the Highlands. It's because of the little windy roads and the impossible corners. It wasn't built for vehicles, that's for sure. We go out and come back in again.
Why would name this area the Highlands?
I think it's higher up geographically than East Chalk, which is right by the water. But also, you know, East Chalk was very much a very exclusive, very white area. And this area, which is really part of East Chop, was never considered part of East Chop. It was always called the Highlands.
Sounds like some old European movie.
Yeah, doesn't it?
The Highlands.
Highlands of Scotland.
We're coming to the Highlands.
Yes. And we are now in the Highlands, but not in Scotland.
Where are the Highlands?
I love this site. I love it because the family is still here, and you'll see they've put flowers there today. There's a statue of an angel. There's just, you can tell that it is still honoured and thought about, because Anne P. Jennings, who was the first African-American nurse at Hartford General Hospital and the first African-American nursing student at the Yale nursing program.
Wow.
When she passed away 3 years ago, her son James, her grandson, I beg your pardon, James, approached us about a site on the trail, and he said, I never thought of her as somebody who did something amazing, because we throw that phrase around, the first,
Yes.
as if it's easy, and it's anything but. And he said, I just didn't think of her that way. She was my nana, and I always felt like she saved my life. She was somebody who in the community was known as someone that you could, if you were down on your luck and you needed somewhere to stay that night, or just a good meal, she was the one to come to. And you can see what they chose to put: lover, fighter, trailblazer. And judge me by my actions. Because apparently she had very little patience with people who were always going to do something, but never did.
You want to
And she'd,
honey? Go get up. Get the pot.
and she would say, don't tell me what you're going to do. Show me. Judge me by my actions. And so that went on.
These my words.
Yes, that's right.
Let's go check out this plaque.
Okay, there we go. This how we do. Okay, there we go. This how we do. It's your boy Rap Cheesy. There we go. Me just the fly. There we go. We the Poelinama. From the Tena Moninama. You know. Call you Padinama. Making call him Padinama. You know. Oku Moninama. Me adjust the Speninama. You know. Speno checkinama. Na so then king call me nama. You know. We the Poelinama. From the Tena Moninama. You know. Call you Padinama. Making call him Padinama. You know. Oku Moninama.
Now we're going to come around the back of Shearer Cottage and you get a better view of it, the size of it.
Now I'm wondering, you know what I'm thinking? I hate to say it, but unless somebody else has, did you include in your tour Mr. Fry
No,
and the shoe place?
no, we don't. No particular reason that we don't. We just didn't develop that as a site, and nobody asked us to. See, most of the energy for comes from the families.
Because my mother, I think she was the first black woman to have a business on Circuit Ave.
Was she really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's what.
Now, we didn't stay long. We were only there 3 years. Right next to Mr. Fry.
I knew about Mr. Fry. I knew about his existence, but nobody ever
said anything about Sheikah or the, what is his name? I can't even remember his name. He had a restaurant on Circuit.
On Circuit?
A black man, yeah. Jim.
You know, we should find out more about that.
Yes, your sauce.
that maybe we could do something for an area of Second Ave.
Yes.
This is Shearer from the back. See the little house here at the end?
Yes.
That was the original house.
Oh.
And when you look at the property records, you can see where Charles Shearer applied for planning permission to build a 12-roomed, which is what he did. And I assume that was when they were starting the inn.
Yes.
And the old laundry is now like 3 convenience apartments, which we'll be able to glimpse through the trees as we go forward.
So all these houses were African Americans?
At one point I would say yes, everybody
I
was.
think this was in the movie. Doesn't look like this.
Yeah, this isn't an old house.
So what's so significant about the Highlands?
I think almost certainly this was the area that was made available to people of color who wanted to buy property. But what I find incredibly significant about the Highlands is that we're talking 5 generations of owning property here, building a community here. When you're here for 5 generations, passing on your property to the next generation, then you're part of a community, you're part of a mix. You're not summer people. People say, oh, well, they're only here in the summer. It's a huge achievement. And given how difficult it was to achieve any kind of justice and any kind of representation, it is a remarkable story. I think there was an official redlining, as we were saying before. I think people were discouraged from looking at property in other areas on the island, but they weren't discouraged here.
So what's the cultivation potential of this area?
I would like to see it keep its soul and its integrity. I hope that it will. Right now, there's very little gentrification here, but the area by the Bradley Memorial Church, which Karen mentioned a few minutes ago, I see that now as having had its soul torn from it. There's nothing there that would
That's right.
let you know that that was a vibrant
Actually,
black community.
guess what? There is.
What?
There's a picture on the boat of Reverend Denniston and
Yes,
his
yeah.
people.
And we have them in our book.
Oh,
we have the
good.
photographs of Reverend Denniston. And I knew the Dennistons. What happened there is shameful. It's just shameful. A piece of history that could never be replaced.
Right.
Now the
And
Highlands.
you know, the real estate person who originally had that building, I had asked her, what about these books and what about the furniture in this?
But you know, I must point out the underdevelopment of this area still.
Are you thinking of the roads?
Yeah, the roads, the condition of the area, the upkeep. I mean, the government isn't doing anything for this area. They still are not helping the black people. I mean, after 4 centuries, black communities have no roads. We have to travel through potholes. I mean, that tells of this government and the people that rule in America today and how they're insensitive to the plight of the black people. This is inconducive.
I
You know?
think that
At least their houses now on stilts and rocks and stuff like that, like in down south.
the question of the roads is an interesting one, because the official response from the town of Oak Bluffs would be, well, they can pave the roads.
Yeah, but for you see, that what they do to black people for
Yeah.
a wealthy community like this,
Yeah,
extremely wealthy.
Yeah.
To see them keep black people and black community who are still impoverished
yeah.
by the action of these races, and they tell us we must build our own places, and these are Christian people. Is there a Christian God these people believe in? I can't believe it.
No, I know what you're saying.
Yes,
Um,
you know they need
There's
to
a
be
tendency-
charged
yeah.
with criminality and jailed. All the officials of this government. This is unconstitutional.
there's a tendency here to tell you, oh, well, Martha's Vineyard was different. It's not America. And you hear people saying, who live on the vineyard, oh, I'm going to America, when they're going off, shopping or something.
Yeah, black people say that too.
But the fact is, it is America.
Yeah.
There is a history of racism here.
Yes.
Today I'm going to share a couple of stories with you.
There's something.
I don't want to just focus on that, because I want to focus too on the enormous achievements of African American people here. But it's like when I began the research and discovered enslavement, and there was no argument about it, because I had copies of the probate of people's wills where they listed their African American, often children, as their property.
Yeah, but I'm the great-great-grand-nephew of Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, of course.
I am.
I believe it.
Yeah,
And
we
this-
just came from Monticello, where they had all the Negro family, 300 of us related to Thomas Jefferson there. You couldn't tell white from blacks.
Isn't that funny though, that remember how the white family of Thomas Jefferson, for as long as, God bless DNA, because they kept saying, oh no, it's not true, it's not true, it's not true.
But that's why black people got to learn, because black people made achievement. But when you look at all this thing on a wealthy island like this, what kind of achievement is this? Are black people the cause of their own problems too?
Well, it was a great achievement 5 generations ago, and we are seeing some of that, which is inevitable, but also a little sad, that the 5th generation has got higher standards for themselves and higher expectations. They tend to be well educated, so they think of it as, well, I don't have to be in the Highlands, I can be wherever I want to be. And so some houses do just kind of get abandoned, which is really sad.
Yeah, that means the people not taking care of themselves. I mean, you can't live in slavery for 4 centuries. Then you neglect your community and yourselves and want to live in other areas that are not conducive for your people still, for the masses of your people who are impoverished.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And you know why I blame black attorneys who are living on the hog, have no consciousness of themselves as Africans, and want to continue to be submissive to a system that hurts their people.
Yeah.
And all of them are lawyers. They work, make millions of dollars, live in big houses, and have no compunction of who they are.
And that in itself is a tragedy.
Yes.
Not to know who you are.
So we cannot continue blaming the white man. That's why I tell the black brothers, I said, get away from me with this white man thing. After 4 centuries, Donald Trump cussing black people, and now one black person can talk except the government officials. That is a problem with black America, and it has to change. And look at all this impoverishedness black people living in today. I mean, this real ghetto happiness. Yeah, this is ghetto happiness.
What is this child trying to do?
I don't know.
There are places in Africa better than this, and the African people are not even rich. No, that person confused too.
I think so. I think
Yeah,
I'm gonna
let
move
pass the
forward
other
while we have
ghetto
the
fabulous.
opportunity.
Yeah, look at this, is ghetto fabulous.
This is
Living in
Coleman's-
America like Africans.
This is Coleman's Corners, another family of 5 generations. The house on the corner also belongs to them. This whole area from here, which is the original house,
Come on, you need to do better, man. You need to do better.
down to the corner.
This is ghetto fabulous. Yeah, man, these people need to do better for Americans, for the poor people. These are wealthy black people living impoverished like poor black people in the South. What is this? WTF?
This house was bought by, we're going to honor Granny Coleman, in addition to her husband, Ralph Meshach Coleman, who was the director of the Boston Black Theater during Roosevelt's New Deal. And
They're more progressive than their children and grandchildren.
Yeah.
living in this
Oh,
place.
much more. That's the thing.
Yes.
I think that's
But the African children have lost their
mentality.
mentality. They're going crazy.
Yeah. See, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That nothing came easy.
Yeah.
And when nothing comes easy,
Yes.
and you operate like Granny Coleman, Ralph Mishak was well recognized for his work in black theatre. But his whole life he worked in the garment trade too,
Yeah.
because he couldn't make a living.
Our people suffered, and their children just worthless.
And
Worthless. Look at you. This is worthlessness.
Granny Coleman bought this house for $800
Look at that.
back in the
Our
1940s.
8,000 for black people.
1940s.
Look at
She
it.
came here, and this theme of work, you're going to keep hearing it from me, work and property ownership. She came here, she worked in service in whichever opportunities she could get. She had extended family, helped look after her own children, and she bought the house for $800 from a man called Manuel Silva. The big Portuguese immigration to Oak Bluffs was a generation before.
Yes.
Manuel Silva sold her the house. The family joke about the fact that she used to pay him $5 a week. And she'd see him. She'd always have the $5. And she'd say, oh, I'll see you. They must have got on fine, because he sold her all the land down to the corner. And
She
the
was
big
honest.
house on the corner is lived in by her granddaughter, Jocelyn Walton. Now, Jocelyn told me a story when we were doing this dedication. She said, don't give Ralph Mishak any credit for having the vision to buy a house and land, because he didn't. He never understood why she wanted to buy a house, and after she bought the house, for 10 years, she didn't tell him she'd bought it.
Wow.
So they would come here every summer and stay here, and he would complain. Why are we in this house? Why aren't we in a better house? You're renting a house, you couldn't get a better one than this. After 10 years, she finally said, it's our house, I bought it.
Wow.
And so it's a great
She need to
story.
come back and tell the children too.
I know,
I bought this house. Just get up, niggas.
yeah.
Well, that's an interesting story
Yeah,
too,
you
because
know, I'm glad you're doing
with
this for the black people in Matos Vineyard, because they don't have the vision to do this thing either. You know,
No.
and this is troubling. It is troubling. You know why? Africans are like this in Africa today, and they haven't been to the West.
Yeah.
And the people in the West are becoming Africans in the West, and they don't even know it. Then they hate Africans. You know,
Yeah.
well,
this is educational destruction of the
Let's
mind.
take a look at this one, but I'm not going to hover. So get a shot of the flag, because the lady.
Where's the
who lives
flag?
in
Oh.
it is hostile.
Yeah, but the way our children keep in this house, I'll be hostile too. The way our people acting to each other, to our older folks, I'll be hostile too.
this is Dorothy West's house.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a whole story about.
Is she the one living in here?
No,
No.
she died.
She died, and she left the house
She was the
to her caregiver,
oh,
who was somebody well known around here. There's a lot of stuff about it, how that happened. In the last months of our life, it was difficult for people to gain access to her, and then she left the house. Her niece Abigail lives next door, and the lady who lives in the house is the former caregiver and friend of Miss West, and it's really hard to predict how she'll be.
Yeah, because you know they're fighting for the land.
Yeah.
You know the family fighting herself, the woman, oh God, keep your knife and collects, chop them up.
Because she'll come zooming out of there in a high.
Yeah, I'll tell her I'm speaking for you.
But I'll tell you the story of Miss West and what happened with her. She wrote a book in the 1940s called The Living Was Easy. And it was successful. It was about growing up as an African American here. Miss West was very much, the only way I can best describe it is to say she was a real Boston Brahmin. And she detested the New Yorkers, the African Americans from New York, Miss Powell, Adam Powell, the revolutionaries, and she felt that they had caused a problem and everything had been great until they got here, which is a classic of misplaced racism, where you blame the victim for causing it.
Yes.
You know, and occasionally you could get, you know, she was an older lady, and you don't interrupt older people and say, oh, well, explain that to me. But once in a while I would ask her, well, who were the revolutionaries, Miss West? Adam Clayton Powell, Martin Luther King. They ruined everything. And I would think, huh.
That's interesting.
And then I remember her saying that, and the New Yorkers, they cost us the beach club. The beach club was segregated and restricted, and they did it in that New England way, where you had to have 2 members of the beach club nominate you to be in the beach club, which meant that you were never going to be in the beach club.
That's right.
But the New Yorkers. And one day I finally said to her, Miss West, what did the New Yorkers do that caused this problem in your mind? Oh my dear, they had no idea how to behave. They used to go to the beach in fur coats and high-heeled shoes with fried chicken. Now, wouldn't that make a wonderful cartoon? A hot summer day on the beach with a fur coat, an order of fried chicken and high heels. But here's the story how Miss West became a star, because this road, which is actually a finished road, is called Dorothy West Avenue.
Oh, Lord.
Because when she turned 90, the town celebrated her birthday
And paved the road.
and paved this road.
This is the worst paved road in Martha's Vineyard.
And I remember Miss Belle Powell, God bless her, looking out and saying to me, have you seen what they've called this road? And I said yes, because I knew how welcome that was for her. And I said yes, and she said, have you been to New York? And I said yes. Have you been to Harlem? Yes. Have you seen Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard? Yes. I said, it's the biggest road in New York City, and I have to sit here on this rinky-dink street named after that woman.
That woman.
This is a disgrace, Martha Vineyard officials. You racist people need to get up and change these things. I mean, let the black people live, man. Gosh.
Here's the sign, Dorothy West Avenue.
Yeah, and you black people need to get up, man.
Rise up.
I'm telling you.
One of the...
This is disgusting. Disgusting, disgusting, disgusting.
How Miss West became a star at the age of 90 is she had written a book in the 1960s called The Wedding.
Oh, that's right.
And it was about the marriage of her niece Abigail, who lived next door, to a white man in the 1960s. And it explored all of that whole thing about color and light and dark.
She didn't like it?
I'm not sure how she felt about it.
Well, if she liked it, her daughter wouldn't be, her niece wouldn't be living next door.
She was sort of ambivalent, because she would tell me that, you know, there was no problem until the revolutionaries and the New Yorkers ruined everything.
So we're back on the civilized road.
But in another mood,
Out of the ghetto of Martha Vineyard.
in another mood, she would tell me that when she was a girl, she was always being asked to leave Town Beach when she went on the beach because she was dark, and her sister, who was very light, there was never a problem.
Dorothy West was never dark.
That was what
You
she
saw what you said.
Yeah.
You saw her.
Maybe she was darker than her sister, Karen.
It was a real thing for
Just
her.
ridiculous.
But this is what happened. She wrote the... Hi, Gloria. Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing today? This lady's a cottager.
My mother was a
Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Have a good chat as we're going through. We know each other through various things.
And she's living on the edge of the ghetto. On the Highlands.
How Miss West became a star. the wedding had been rejected as a manuscript back in the 1960s, and Miss West had kind of forgotten it ever existed. Jacqueline Kennedy was an editor at Doubleday Publishing, and she found the manuscript. Now, I'm pretty 150% certain that Jacqueline Kennedy had never been in the Highlands. She may have been in Oak Bluff, definitely never been in the Highlands. But she had a huge estate up in the Quinna.
As it look now, during those days it was worse.
Yeah. And she came to visit Miss West because she had an estate up in the Quinna, which is for sale at the moment for $65 million.
Yeah,
if you're interested.
The yellow one with the red roof.
I bet they'd take 64.
I bet
And
they
I'll
would.
starve to death. I wouldn't even get in there. I'd be living on the street. Right on the Jackie Kennedy song.
Well, Jackie Kennedy and Miss West struck up quite a friendship. And Jackie Kennedy used to come visit her. And she wrote a foreword. She edited the wedding and wrote a foreword for it. It got published. Oprah bought it and made a movie of the wedding. Halle Berry played the bride, and Miss West became a star. I remember calling her in that era, and she was a great storyteller and loved telling you these stories. Even if sometimes you would be thinking revolutionaries ruined everything. New Yorkers went to the beach, but she loved telling you. And I called her to check on a story about the beach, because the beach has always been an issue. And she said, "Can't talk now, darling. Call me back later. I can't talk now, darling. I have Oprah here." She became the star. The Clintons went to our 90th birthday party. That was really nice.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. This is how we do. Okay, there we go. This is how we do. It's your boy Rap Cheesy. There we go. Me just the fly. Here we go. We the Poelinama. From the tenama ninama. Call you Padinama. Making call him Padinama. Okumo ninama. Me adjust the speninama. Speno checkinama. Na so then king call me nama. We the Poelinama. From the tenama ninama. Call you Padinama. Making call him Padinama.